Hello, it's Maggie, the Cheshire Crafter here. It's around about mid-February and I thought I'd update you on where I'm at with my Hawaiian quilts. No, my Hawaiian shirts quilt. I thought I'd share with you where I was up to today. The good news is I finished the quilt topper. The thing about Hawaiian shirts is that they can be really gaudy just on their own. Now you can make them as gaudy as you want and as colour clashing as you want. You can do this design with Christmas design shirts or fabrics. I just wanted to tone it down quite a bit, but I wanted the fabric to shine, and I've tried to make it shine on the back. So let me just take you through the stages of how I made it. Row will have 12 flying geese of the same fabric design and 3 6.5 inch blocks. By the time these are sewn, these will be 6 inch blocks. And you can see from row 1, I've got to sew 4 flying geese together, then a white block, then 4 flying geese, then a white block, 4 flying geese, then a white block. And I want to imply movement in this quilt, so there will be a stagger. Sometimes there'll be 2 flying geese before a white block, so I really need to check my pattern to make sure I'm getting it right. So first of all, the simplest one will be 4 and 1, 4 and 1, 4 and 1, and this is row 1. After trimming the blocks, I've decided on the position and which is which row. So I've started with a dark, and then I've marked them with a post-it note. That's row 1. Then a light, this is floral. Then another dark. Then I put the medium colour in between here because this has stars in it. Then I've opted for the first of my Hawaiian shirt fabric, and then the second, and the third, which emulates the sea. And then I've weighted it down slightly with the grey, so my 4 Hawaiian shirt fabrics are in the middle. Then I've gone medium, dark, an abstract floral light, and a dark again to finish. So I'm hoping to get a balance with a dark edge going lighter in the middle, up through islands, sea, sky, and up and finishing on a dark. And you'll notice that I put the darks that have blue in on the edge to balance up the blues in the middle. Right, let's see what that looks like in pattern form then. I'm going to sew this rows at a time. All my flying geese will be looking to the right, so they'll be flying east. Now, if I were to put this over the top and place a 1/4 inch seam down here, I can't actually see whether I've got the point correct. So I'm going to do the opposite way and turn it upside down, and I'm going to offer it to the machine that way. What I must ensure is that when I sew, I don't cut this point off here. So I must have a 1/4 inch here, and to ensure that, I'm going to pin it for a start, and then I'm going to use my hemline tape and my magnet. Use a stilette if you need to hold the fabric down and in place. I'm using my seam ripper. Like that. Now I have been a bit generous there because when I've opened it out, I've got some of the white, but I've certainly not cut my point off. I'm going to continue doing the same for all 4 flying geese. Turn the seams to the dark patterned edge, and then I've finger pressed. Now I'm going to add one of the 6.5 inch squares, and I'll do the same again. I'm going to sew from behind so I make sure I capture that point. So this now measures 18.5 by 6.5, allowing for 1/4 inch seam allowances, and I'm going to repeat this now 3 times for row 1. Right, that's the first row done. Don't forget to mark it at the top, and this now measures 6.5 by 54.5 inches. I've only got 11 more rows now to do, and I'm going to follow my pattern for row 2. Row 2 begins the movement, and I'm going to start with a 6.5 inch block, then do 4 flying geese, and then repeat to the end. Just a word of warning here, because I've unpicked this once. This white cotton fabric isn't cut on the bias. This triangular piece of fabric might be, and as I sew it, the fabric is pushing and pushing, so that by the time it came to the end, this had pushed down further beyond the white square. So I've unpicked it and repinned it. I want those edges to meet exactly, and I'm going to slightly ease that fabric in. Now you could starch the fabric to stop this from happening. I'm just going to gently ease that in the middle, and that should prevent that from buckling and missing. The way I had it, I would have missed the points off at the end here. Right, that's row 2 done. Don't forget to mark it with a post-it note. And as we look at row 3, you'll see where the difference comes in. Row 3, you'll see that there's 2 flying geese before we have a white block, then 4, then white, then 4, then white, then 2 at the end. And then this is a 3-row pattern repeat. I'm changing the fabrics as I go down, but the pattern will now repeat 4 times down the quilt. Now this is my own pattern, but you're more than welcome to copy it if you like. Apologies for showing you in my kitchen, but I wanted to show you that when I'm looking at the layout of the Hawaiian shirt fabric, I've made sure I haven't put all the trees or all the islands next to each other, so that across the whole row there is a mixture. I'm now at the point where I'm going to start adding rows to each other, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, until I get down to the bottom. You'll notice that where I ran out of this fabric, I put the contrasting fabric right on the end. I've done that on both ends, so it's not quite as obvious. It would be more obvious if it was in the middle. On this, because all the flying geese are going in one direction and I've finger pressed in one direction, it means that when I'm connecting the seams and have pinned here, I've actually got 6 layers of fabric to go to. Now that might make the needle jump, so for this I'm changing to a walking foot. I'm now adding a border. This is a 1.5 inch cut white cotton, matching the cotton here. This will give me, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, a 1 inch strip border, inner border around the edges. I do the 2 long edges first, and then I'll do across the top and the bottom. I haven't changed my presser foot. I'm still using my walking foot. An eagle-eyed of you will notice that I'm actually using blue thread for this. Although it was polyester, I found the perfect fabric for this flying geese quilt to create a border. Let me show you. First of all, it needed ironing, but I found this in a charity shop. So I wanted to know that I had sufficient from this flying geese viscose shirt in order to do a 2.5 inch cut, which will give me a 2 inch border. Now the 1 inch and the 2 inch together mimic the 3 inch width of the flying geese. And I did that on a back of an envelope, and I just worked out that I need 270 inches cut from this shirt. And I've made sure I've got enough cutting from the back and the sleeve. Because this is quite flimsy, I needed to use starch on this, and I've used Mary Ellen's Best Press. I haven't gone into detail here on how to add a border. The only thing I will say in this is that I needed to cut a lot of quite short pieces. So I took the pieces that were 10 inches and more to create the outer border for this quilt. Well, it's quite big. This quilt measures 60 by 80, and I can't photograph it all for you. I've got it on the ironing board with the 2 borders added, and I'm going to go in and focus on the focus of attention, which is the 4 Hawaiian prints, well, or 5 if you include the stars that I've used, and I'm really pleased with that. Now, considering Hawaiian shirts can be really gaudy, this has rather toned it down, and I've tried to get some movement in the quilt with all the flying geese flying in one direction, and adding a square gives a little bit of light relief for that. I've used the fabric which is the flying geese, but otherwise it works like cotton. Just treat it as cotton, and that's from a shirt as well. Overall, I'm pleased with that. What I want to do is something a little bit different now with the backing. So I've cut 12 6.5 inch squares, and I'm going to include 2 white squares at the beginning of the end, and I'm going to sew a strip of these. A 6.5 inch block will give me a 6 inch strip down the middle, and as you can see, a fussy cut the fabric just to showcase that just a little bit more for the back of the quilt. And because this is 60 inches wide, I'm going to be sewing this to join 2 pieces that are about 42 inches across, and I'm going to be sewing them in the same order that they appear on the front of the quilt. For added strength across the back, I've left the selvage edge on each side of the white cotton fabric, and I'm doing a double layer of stitching here. A line of stitching will just strengthen this seam in case there's any pulling. So sewing a 6 inch strip down the middle of 2 pieces of cotton really helps tell the story, and the story that really begins with the grey of the land, the sea, the sailing, the surfing and the sky. And I've fussy cut so that I've got a boat and a central figure in. At the moment, this strip for the back is central between the 2 pieces of cotton, but I'm actually going to offset it so that it's rather like reading a book. I want it on the left side when you're looking at the back. Next stage then is me laying this out on my bed to create a quilt sandwich. It's going to be quite heavy. I need to cut off some of this excess width, but that will be in part 4. For now, this is Maggie, the Cheshire Crafter. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back and join me again soon. Bye.